Hello, and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard and their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective, confident leadership. People who want to lead by example, bring others with them, and who are ready to learn and adapt to deliver brilliant results. I'm Juliet Corbett.
And I'm Lucy Gower. Today we're going to talk about confidence, and specifically why confidence might ebb and flow. And I want to acknowledge to start with, we're making it a bit of an assumption that if you're listening, your confidence does have high points where you feel super confident, and then on other days or other times or contexts where you know that your confidence is taking a bit of a hit, a bit of a wobble, you don't feel so confident. But I think first of all, it would be helpful to just clarify what we mean by confidence and kind of define it before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I almost equate it with a self-belief, like a feeling of I can do it.
Yeah.
A feeling of I feel comfortable. I guess you can feel slightly uncomfortable and still confident, and that works as well. But often there's a discomfort when the confidence is absent. And when you've got it, I think actually from my point of view, when you've got it, you don't even notice you've got it. You just get on and do stuff. And then when it's absent or it's low, the lack of confidence is more obvious as a feeling of an uncomfortable feeling of a lack of self-belief or a lack of I can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with your definition. I think it's, I suppose if we're talking about self-confidence, it's that belief that whatever comes our way, we're going to be able to deal with it. I trust in myself that whatever situation I'm in, whilst I might not know how to deal with it, I'll be able to figure it out and I'll be able to do it. So it's belief in yourself and your abilities.
And that's a really good point, actually.
Like almost like regardless of what your abilities are, you believe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's interesting that when we wrote the episode title, I assumed we meant self-confidence, but you're right that actually confidence itself can be confidence in others. And I suppose in this episode, we're looking into confidence in yourself, so self-confidence, but you're right that in actual fact, that's a subset, if you like.
Yes.
Confident. Yeah.
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 I agree.
So as you mentioned at the beginning there, we're talking about the fact that it ebbs and flows, that some days it's there and some days it's not, or there's this kind of fluid feeling of the confidence increasing and decreasing over time. I guess that's not actually the same for everybody. And if you're listening to this and you're always confident, that's your experience and that's great and that's fine, and maybe skip to the next episode. But from my experience, a lot of people do experience this ebb and flow of confidence. What does that feel or look like for you, Lucy? How would you describe that feeling of it ebbing and flowing?
That's a really good question, and I'm having to think really hard about how I answer it. I think that if I think about myself, and that there's some days where it's hard to articulate, you just feel that you can tackle anything, and other days where perhaps that internal narrative is a bit like, I'm not, are you sure that you can do this? Are you sure that this is the right thing to do? That kind of like self-doubt, and perhaps it gets termed as like limiting beliefs. So I know that when I work with clients, all my clients are trying to make some sort of change happen, whether that is developing a new product or service or trying to make their team more effective and more efficient. I notice that dips in confidence come when you are tackling challenges, or are more likely to come when you are tackling challenges. And my other learning from working with clients is that I don't believe that some people are more confident than others. But the people that are confident stretch themselves and do work on themselves and their own confidence in order to manage it. So it's not a case of I'm confident or I'm not. It's more a case of I've got tips and tools to manage my confidence, and I can spot for me when my confidence is taking a knock, and I've got things that I do in order to re-establish a level of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That it's not that you're born with it or without it. It's that there's a self-awareness that as you develop that self-awareness and that's that self-reflection of noticing when you feel you do feel more confident or when you feel less confident, so that you can
Mm.
start to spot the patterns for yourself. And then just like most things we talk about on this podcast, like there is no one right way to look at this. There are multiple ways of looking at it because the things that might help you then become more confident either in the moment, like something you could do, some breathing exercise or something in the moment before you walk into a meeting that you're feeling underconfident about, that's going to be completely different to what would work for other people. And
Yeah.
similarly, on the longer time scale, the type of self-work, if you like, so kind of building your self-awareness, the type of reflectivity that we're asking people to kind of reflect on what it is that helps them build confidence over time, that process and the outcomes of that long-term self-awareness process are going to also be completely different for everybody. So
Yeah.
I think maybe what we're trying to do is describe something that feels the same for a lot of people. A lot of people
Yeah.
feel that ebb and flow of confidence, but what you do about it, only you are going to know
Yeah.
because it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. And that might take a little bit of trial and error.
Yeah,
And within that, there are some tips and tactics that are more likely to be universal because it is about reducing the cortisol stress hormone and
yeah,
managing adrenaline. So you mentioned breathing before, and being able to stop and to take some slow, deep, proper breaths. Um, we know that in our physiology, that helps to reduce cortisol, the stress hormone. And I believe that that is very much connected to confidence. So confidence and resilience, another Venn diagram, they
yeah,
sit closely together. When your resilience is high, your confidence is high, and vice versa. Um, so if your resilience is about reducing some of that stress, the breathing does help, and the
yeah.
confidence will have a knock-on impact on helping you to manage your confidence.
Yeah, and certainly I think recognizing it really is similar to the resilience, and therefore that there's a connection as well between stress and anxiety and particular life events outside of work that
Yeah,
cause those sorts of stress and anxiety will also physiologically as well as mentally and cognitively, that's going to impact on confidence in other, or it might impact on confidence in other parts of life, including work. And so
yeah,
we are biologically driven animals, and
yeah,
therefore some of that biology that comes into it around the kind of the stress hormones and the way that we're building that resilience, and we see that resilience also ebb and flow. It is a very, very similar conversation. For me, I think confidence is it's a felt experience, I
mm-hmm,
suppose. It's a feeling of the way you're thinking is
mm-hmm,
combining with the way your body is responding.
mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a subset in that sense of the way you feel and think about a task ahead of you or an opportunity that you may or may not want to take ahead of you.
Yeah. And I think there's something around change and challenge, and we're often encouraged to step outside of our comfort zone. And I think that when we do that, stepping into
Yeah,
some unknown, that's when it's very likely that if we're not keeping an eye on what our confidence is doing and how we're feeling, that it can take a knock. I know that we've talked about this in the past.
so I know for me personally, and this isn't going to be the same for everybody, it's not the same for everyone that I work with, but for me personally, I find that comfort zone, stretch zone, panic zone really helpful. So I
Yes.
know that if I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, I know that I need to step out of my comfort zone into the stretch zone in order to grow, because that personally I'm driven by the idea of growth and new ideas, new trying out new things. So that
Mm-hmm.
feels good. And it also is quite boring just to sit in a comfort zone forever. So I know that there is this benefit of stepping out of comfort into stretch and then recognizing that the confidence is therefore potentially going to be lower on those areas which are stretching me. And knowing that's not a problem. It's not a problem that my confidence ebbs and flows. That's a natural experience
Yeah.
of life. And so recognizing, okay, that's probably going to happen because I'm stepping into stretch. Oh, yes, it is happening. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then having some coping mechanisms that allow me to keep in the stretch zone despite the drop of
Yeah.
confidence, knowing that the learned experience of then not everything in stretch becomes comfort eventually. Sometimes you think that actually that isn't
Yeah.
for me, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But some of those stretch activities, things that you're focusing on, then become comfortable. And one of the reasons they become part of your comfort zone as that expands is because you're feeling confident.
Yeah.
So that really helps me to recognize that the ebb and flow of confidence like that, that's not a problem. That's
Yeah.
just a way of me understanding the fact, okay, I'm feeling stretched in this particular activity. I'm in my stretch zone.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to just talk a little bit about stretch zone, panic
Mm.
zone in some context in case it's something that if you're listening, you've not come across before. So I describe your comfort zone as it's not a bad place to be, but it's a place where you feel comfortable, you're not stretched. The things that you are doing might be like the day-to-day things that you know that you can do, and some of those things that you can do on autopilot. And then in terms of your stretch zone is almost like you're taking one foot out in order to stretch yourself, but not stretch yourself so much that you scare yourself and run back to your comfort zone. So my example would
Yeah.
be public speaking. So say if you decide that public speaking is the thing that you want to stretch yourself to do, and there's some stat about public speaking about how much it scares people. The top three things that scare human beings are death, spiders, and public speaking. And I think public speaking is might be number one.
I've heard
Anyway,
that too. Yeah.
so you decide that you want to get good at public speaking. A danger zone move would be to pitch to do a keynote at a conference in front of hundreds of people. A stretch zone learning would be that you might offer to present at the next team meeting. So you are practicing that skill, almost like building the muscle. And it might be that you decide you want to keep moving that stretch zone so that a keynote speech becomes stretch zone for you because you're building up. Or you might decide, actually, I don't want to do that. That's not something that I would need to stretch out of my comfort zone about. I'll do something else. But it's a kind of that approach of sort of trial and error and little steps, not a great big leap where
Yeah.
you'll scare yourself. And that's certainly what I
Absolutely.
did when I was learning to public speak all those years ago.
And what's interesting is you said that this might actually be true only for public speaking, but I'm sure there's other examples we can think of that there's a difference between nerves and confidence as well, which is quite useful to
Oh,
notice
yeah.
because especially for public speaking. So as you stretch to doing slightly larger audiences and so on, you might expect that even though that thing is within your comfort zone, you don't feel nerves stepping onto a big stage. But and I think probably you, Lisa, I think
Mm-hmm.
we've had this conversation before, and I know lots of other very, very well-known public speakers still feel nerves stepping out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a for a lot of people, that's a good thing. That's like I'm on top of my game, I need to focus. I'm exhilarated. There's a kind of an energy that comes with that. And that it's fine to continue to feel that. That's actually slightly different from an ongoing lack of self-confidence around public
Yeah.
speaking. And I'm sure that it's true of other examples, not just public speaking, although I also recognize that's probably not a universal thing across
Yeah.
all things that might be in your stretch zone.
So that's interesting. I think that nerves, I would call that adrenaline. So you need a certain
Yeah.
amount of adrenaline, which helps you to focus. So adrenaline is that fight, flight, freeze response, and it focuses the mind. Your blood pumps faster. You're kind of getting ready to go into battle, I suppose, which is what it might feel like as you're going to step out on a big stage, depending on how friendly the audience looks. But it helps to focus you. I think lack of confidence is that inner critic that goes, oh,
Yeah.
you can't do this. And I agree with you. I think that they are different. And it is helpful to be able to name those things because, oh, I'm getting butterflies in my stomach. Oh, that's the adrenaline. Okay, I'm getting ready. And this is normal.
Yeah.
Um, the inner critic going, oh, you can't do this. You're going to get found out. That's also quite normal. It gets called imposter syndrome. Apparently, it is something that affects about 70% of people. That is also your body trying to keep you safe. So back hundreds of years ago, when we lived in small communities, we would have a choice about whether we went exploring over the hills to see if there was something better or if we wanted to stay put. So that little, and we are wired to think the worst because that's fundamentally about our survival. In Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, he talks about this, so we'll share that in the
Mm.
show notes. Um, but when you're stepping out of your comfort zone, that inner critic can go, "Oh, hang on a minute, danger! I'm going to tell them to stay put." And how you frame that inner critic is up to you. So you can frame it as, "Oh, I'm going to get found out. I'm going to get back in my comfort zone, and I'm not going to stretch myself." Or you could go, "Oh, I might be onto something here because I'm definitely stretching and learning because my inner critic system, which was very helpful hundreds of years ago, but less helpful now in the modern world, is speaking up." So you've got a choice about how you frame
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
excitement
absolutely.
or fear. It's the same chemicals that are surging around your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being able to reframe it, if you wish to, enables you to step into that stretch zone. And it's a more comfortable, enjoyable feeling if you're able to step into that stretch zone. That the inner critic can continue. It can
Yeah.
continue as long as it wants.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to believe what it's telling you. Um,
Well, I think on that, it's really easy to believe what it's telling you because it can be really persistent.
mhm.
And learning how to um, sort of keep it in its box or reframe it is really helpful. I agree with you. I don't think it ever goes away necessarily if you have that, but how you manage it is the difference between how you step into your stretch zone and how you don't.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering in my mind now whether we dive into that in more detail, whether that is a bigger topic in itself for a future episode, potentially around
Mm,
imposter syndrome, inner critic,
yeah.
and so on. Um, the other element of confidence that I've learned, and actually I've learned probably only in the last five years or so ish, is that confidence is the product after action.
Mm-hmm.
So when you step into that stretch zone and you feel underconfident about the thing you're doing because it is
Mm-hmm.
within your stretch zone, it's actually by doing it anyway. There's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit around, feel the fear and do it anyway. That's fine. The confidence comes after you've taken the action rather than it being a prerequisite for action. Because if you think,
Yes.
I'll wait until I feel confident and then I will take the action, it's probably not going to happen, to be honest, or at least it'll take a long
Yeah.
time to get there. So there's something about it being the product of
Yeah.
action that I think has only been a relatively recent thing. I wish I'd known that like back in my 20s. I think it would have made
Yeah.
life a lot easier. And there's a quote that I love around this, which it sounds quite archaic. It's do the I love this quote, and I'm not sure what you think, Lucy. So it's do the thing and have the power. Do not the thing and have not the power. And it
Oh.
is something that there's a back in the 1800s there was a philosopher in the US called Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he writes this, and it just encapsulates this idea that when you do the thing, I love it's called the thing. That is
Mm.
like the thing I'm scared of. It almost has a capital T and a capital, like two capital T's, the thing. Do the thing and have the power. The power is the confidence that you feel afterwards. And it starts with that adrenaline rush of, I did it. And then
Yeah.
it kind of becomes, oh, maybe I could do that again, kind of a self
Yeah.
belief. And then the contrast of do not the thing, so you don't do the thing, it just sits there almost like that frog on the front of your desk that's getting bigger every day.
Yeah.
Don't do that thing, and you're not going to have the power to do it. The power comes from the doing.
Yeah.
When
I,
I first heard that, that landed massively with me, although it's kind of 1800 speak, so it's Slightly
I
archaic.
I like you in 1800 speak. I'm going to encourage you to do more of it.
I shall research some more for future
Yeah,
episodes. There we go.
I'd like an 1800s quote in every episode going forward, if that's okay. I agree with you, and from a slightly different language and mindset, I suppose, in that there is massive learning in doing. By not doing something, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to learn and grow. And if you are careful about your stretch zone, you're kind of setting yourself up to have a little success, which you, exactly as you said, and you think, oh, I can do this, I can speak in front of other people. I did it at my team meeting. Okay, so now I'm going to do the next thing. So being clear about what's your stretch zone and not going into your danger zone can help to set you up for success. But I think there's an important point here as well, that not you will not have success every single time you step out of your comfort zone. And so I think there's some important things to think about in terms of growth mindset, which, growth mindset is coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, and her work is around the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset. So fixed mindset is like, doesn't matter what you do, your capacity for learning and delivery of whatever you're doing is just set because you are fixed. Growth mindset is around what, Juliet, you've just talked about, stepping out of your comfort zone and learning whether you have success or not. So if you have a growth mindset, you're like, okay, well, I stepped out of my comfort zone. I didn't do as well as I thought, but I've learned all of this and I'm ready to go again. Fixed mindset is I've stepped out of my comfort zone, didn't work, not doing it again. So that sort of knowledge and reframing in the context of confidence, I think, is really important, because you do feel confident from doing action and getting success. And it's important to feel confident from doing action and getting learning, even if you haven't got full on success.
Yeah, so I completely agree, Lucy. Absolutely. And the idea that even what we could name failure, although nothing's really failure because it's learning for the next time, if it feels like that failed for you, that means that there's enormous amounts of learning in there to understand next time you give it a try what you could do slightly differently. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is actually, it's do the thing and have the power. Like, it doesn't say do the thing and have success and have the power.
Yeah.
It's actually like, just do it and you'll have the power. And I think the missing piece that he probably missed, which is fair enough back in the 1800s, was exactly what you said around there being a growth mindset to enable us to have that cycle of reflection and learning, even when things don't go to plan. And obviously a lot of the time they don't either they're not wildly successful or wildly not successful. They're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Some things worked, some things didn't.
Yeah.
So that growth mindset allows us to enter into, on a regular basis, that reflection process, which then triggers the learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, this comes back to something that we've talked about before, about, as a leader, what makes great team and great team culture. And we've talked about trust, vulnerability, and purpose. And I think this is where sort of trust and vulnerability are in their Venn diagram, because if you feel in the organization and team that you're working in, that you can trust to say, well, this didn't work quite as well as I thought it would, and be able to show that, it's okay if things don't go brilliantly all the time. That helps to build trust. It helps, and you showing your vulnerability leads by example and helps other people to do the same. Yeah. And that's not going, everything has to work. And it's not going, if you haven't done due diligence in your homework and something has failed, that's different to giving something a go and taking action, having done the thinking behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And realizing as a manager that, yes, your confidence may well ebb and flow, and it's exactly the same for everyone you work with, and we're not on the same curve up and down. We're not on the same roller coaster. Everyone's on their own roller coaster, ups and downs. And so as you're leading that team, what you're doing, as you've said, is creating the trust for people to be vulnerable enough to give stuff a try. As long as they're putting in, the effort, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. The outcome is always going to be a learning.
Mm-hmm.
And helping the team to have that growth mindset of then, okay, perfected, I've learned, we're going to do it again, or are we going to adapt over time? But there's also this sense that I think as well that there's something around the biology that you touched on earlier, that as well as there being an adrenaline result, there's also ebbs and flows that everyone on the team is going to have, which are just to do with times of day, times
Yeah.
of year, life stage, like hormonal stuff. Like there's a lot we don't understand about the way our
Mm.
bodies work. And so even with all of this sort of slightly, well, very logical approach to, comfort zones and stretch zones and,
Mm-hmm.
cortisol, and there's also something a little bit unknown around these things just ebb and flow for what seems like random reasons. But I'm sure there's something underpinning we just don't understand yet. And as a
Mm.
team leader, I think there's also a bit of space that you can give people to have good days and bad days, and not always to have to know why that is. That's okay. But to create the environment in which hopefully everybody is learning and growing over time, so that confidence, generally speaking, is higher over time rather
Mm-hmm.
than it kind of continuing along a pattern of continuing to have really
Yeah.
low ebbs.
I think as a leader and manager of a team, it's almost nurturing that within your team. And as an individual, even just being able to go, oh, what's stopping me doing this? Oh, my confidence feels at rock bottom. The inner critic saying this. Okay, so what are some of the things that I can do? Is it that I need to do some breathing, get a good night's sleep? Look rationally, am I is this thing in the danger zone? And being able to be candid with your colleagues and manager about what's getting in your way, and that
Yeah.
today your confidence is isn't very good, and actually the thing that you think you need to do is to go home, get a good night's sleep, and do a reassessment in the morning.
Mm.
That's also fine. Comes back to
Yeah.
trusting your people to do the
Yeah.
best things for them to help them to deliver their best work.
Yeah, exactly. So we mentioned at the beginning actually some of the different tactics will be different for different people. We've talked about what feels largely things that are going to be true for many people, but I think when it comes to the tactics, what are the other things that people can try? So obviously we've mentioned the breathing, we've mentioned the good night's sleep and the resilience. One of the ones that comes to my mind is your idea, which I think we've shared on the podcast before, around Book of Truths.
Mm.
So having a place where you can put positive feedback, reinforcement, and that sometimes rereading that
Yes, and
is a good thing to do.
yes, absolutely. So when you get feedback from others, to keep that in one place, and when your confidence takes a bit of a knock, you can go back and look at it. But and it's not only feedback from others, because that is other people bolstering your confidence. If we're talking here about self-confidence,
Mm-hmm.
there is a reflective habit that I would encourage everybody to get into, of whether you do it every day or every week or every month. What are the things that you're pleased with and proud of? Because it is, you are reinforcing your own self confidence. What other people say about you is part of the mix, but your own
Yeah.
feelings of where you've been confident is really, really important.
Yeah.
And the third bit in the Book of Truths, if we're thinking about teams and team working, is remember to tell your colleagues, well done, good work, thank you. And it's really easy to forget that. No, not true. I'll take that back. It's not easy to forget. It is harder when you're hybrid to do that, because in when you're all in the same room together, you can just walk over to someone's desk and say thanks ever so much. Or you see them and you're like, oh, that thing worked out, thanks so much. When you don't see them and you don't have that nudge, you have to be more deliberate about making sure
Yeah.
you do it and filling up other people's books of truths.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that itself, I mean, we know with other forms of negative feelings, when we're positive to others, it triggers positive feelings in ourselves. So there's that
Yeah.
sense of actually giving positive feedback to others actually can also, as well as boosting their confidence, and they'll, it's like a social trading of confidence around the
Yeah.
team. But there's also a direct influence of it coming back as a positive feeling for you. Because when people say if you're having a bad day, do something nice for someone else, and that there's a reaction of doing something nice for someone else that makes you more compassionate maybe for yourself as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And the other part of that doing something nice for other people, if you're on the receiving end, just say thank you. It's really easy to reject some of those things. And I don't even understand why we do it, but I often hear someone say, "Oh, thank you so much for that brilliant piece of what you did," and they go, "Oh no, it was nothing. It wasn't me." Don't say any of that. Don't reject the confidence that you're being given. Just say thanks,
Yeah,
even if deep down you're like, "Oh no, it wasn't me." They've thought it's good. They've said thank you. Own
yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. And then in terms of other things to try, things that I found actually helpful, at different times, it doesn't help all the time, but actually meditation has really
Mm-hmm.
helped in terms of it helping me to calm some of the inner critic and helping
Mm-hmm.
me to feel more sort of positive about people around me and the kind of the world and the way we're all connected and all that kind of things. That's helped me. It might not help everyone, that's fine. Um, and then the other thing that sometimes I've found help for me, but I know for some of my clients has been really helpful. I'm not brilliant, maybe at holding myself to account, but for some people, things like habit trackers, although we often
Mm.
talk about those in the world of forming a new habit, actually, if there is a sense that confidence comes after the doing, then just doing it
Mm.
sometimes builds the confidence. So sometimes, depending on what it is you're working on and where you think you want to become more self-confident, simple things like habit tracking and accountability
Yeah.
buddies, all of those things that we talk about potentially in other parts of improving personal productivity and improving habits and so on, healthy habits. A lot of those actually are also connected to confidence because
Yeah.
it gives you a feeling of making progress, a feeling that actually this is something I can do, this is something I can grow into over time. So
Yeah.
I think those are other things that I've seen people find helpful too.
Yeah, I agree. Getting out for a walk, doing whatever fills your bucket back up, your energy bucket back up. Me going out for a walk. And then I think the other thing that I just think it's important to touch on if we're talking about confidence, we talked about breathing, but your posture and your body language um is important. No one can see us here, but we're both like rolling our shoulders about as we're talking
Yeah, if you're listening, if
subconsciously.
you did the same as we did, which was to improve our posture, at the moment that Lucy said that, yes, you're with us. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
there's a TED talk by Amy Cuddy, which is about how your body language can um, almost trick yourself into feeling more confident than you are. So I do recommend watching that. You don't have to be doing like power poses, but just acknowledge if you're sat in a um, what Amy Cuddy would call a high status pose, but sat like you're your most or stood like you're your most confident, your body will respond to that by reducing the amount of cortisol that is charging around in it, thus making you more confident. And whether
Yeah.
that research has come under criticism because the research groups weren't big enough, it works for me. If it's placebo and it works, then hurrah. So give it a go. That's another one for your toolkit.
Worth trying,
Yeah,
definitely. One for me, actually, it's halfway between nerves and confidence for me personally, but is when I place my feet on the floor,
yeah,
I then consciously feel my connection through to the floor,
yes,
which sounds a bit weird. But even sitting, you can do it as well. Place your feet firmly on the floor, kind of straight ahead of you, and then feel the ground or the floor through them. It doesn't matter if you're on the ground floor or not. There's something there which also works for me. I've heard other people say it. It
yeah.
might not work for
Doing it
you. That's
now.
fine. There you go. There you go. Well,
Feeling
we're both
good.
sitting very upright right now with our feet firmly connected to the floor, feeling confident as we wrap up our conversation on why does my confidence ebb and flow. As we wrap up our conversation, Lucy, what would you like someone to take away from this as they're listening?
I think it's not a case that you are or are not confident. It's about how you manage it. So for some contexts, for some people, you're super confident. For others, less so. Just start to notice and know that that's okay. That's normal, and figure out whether it's important that you need to step out of your comfort zone. Like if you never want to be a public speaker, don't even you don't need to bother doing it. But focus your energy on where you think you are going to make the most impact in whatever it is that you're choosing to do, and focus your energy and your confidence development around that. What
Yeah.
about you, Juliet? What's your
I think firstly to realize that it's not a problem. It's something
Yeah.
that everyone experiences, and that's part of being who we are. And then secondly, get curious, I think is my best piece of advice. Like really notice when you're feeling high or low confidence levels. Really notice what you think caused that, what you can then do about it, try stuff, reflect on what works. Know that you're never going to know, you're not always going to know the answer. There's some stuff we don't understand that's probably going on in the background as to why it's ebbing and flowing, but that there will be some little things about you that you can learn that will help you to manage that confidence and keep it higher, keep it bolstered a little bit more in future. So get really curious about yourself, I think would be my best piece of advice. And ask for support as well. Ask for support when you need it.
Mm.
A lot of us are really bad at asking for help,
Oh
myself
yeah,
included.
me too.
Maybe we'll do a topic on that, like really
Yeah,
bad at
yeah.
asking for help. But ask for help, ask for support from those people around you, so that they can help you to get curious and to bolster that confidence as well.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. I love this conversation. There are a couple of resources we've mentioned which we'll put into the episode notes, and a couple of topics there which we'll be doing in future episodes as well. If so, we've kind of piqued your interest on things we haven't fully explored today. Love to hear your feedback, your thoughts on things we've shared, things we've missed. The same thing is not going to be true for everyone. So if there's something that you've tried that just worked for you around this, then let us know so we can share it with people in future. And if this has been helpful for you, then share it with other people. We often find our podcasts and the places that the resources that help us because of recommendations from people that we know and trust. So if this has helped you, please, the things like following the podcast on the podcast app you use, rating it on that app, or just telling people about it. That would be fantastic to help spread the quiet leadership revolution. So thank you for spending this time with us today. Don't forget that if we want to make our voice heard and our impact felt, we need to gift ourselves the space to think, the courage to lead, and the confidence to adapt. I'm Juliet Corbett.
And I'm Lucy Gower. We hope you'll join us next time for the Quiet Leadership Revolution.